When you hear the word Ansible, I want you to think automation, systems, cloud, networking, automating all the things. So Ansible is an in-demand tool in the IT market, which if you learn and get good at, will increase your chances of landing a higher position. It's owned by Red Hat, simple to use, and you don't need to know programming. It helps, and I encourage you to maybe go off and learn some basics about programming, but you don't need to, so you don't need to get discouraged. You can still get away and learn the basics of Ansible without knowing programming. So, what is Ansible, and why do you need to know it? Imagine you are a system administrator and you manage just one server. It's easy to manage, and let's say I have to update the DNS settings on a Linux box. And it's easy. If I'm using CentOS, all I do is update the etc/resolve-conf file, update that one file, boom, done, easy. But now, what if you have 100 servers and you need to do that on all 100 of those servers? Well, first of all, that's gonna that's going to take a lot of time. And second of all, human error exists through repetition, so you might actually mess up a few times along the way, and then when they don't work, you're spending even more time and stressing out working on this project. And that's just one DNS config setting. It's probably the least of your concern if you're managing 100 servers. You probably have all sorts of things to troubleshoot. You have all of these things coming down on you to escalate, other things to work on and manage to provision. That's a nightmare. But Ansible comes in, saves us from those daemons with its automation wizard power, and that's why we're going to learn Ansible, so we can provide that kind of value with our skill set to companies to position ourselves better, to make ourselves more marketable, and so we can get the job done. Ansible is not only great on our servers, but you can also use it with routers, switches, firewalls, load balancers, and more. So, what is Ansible? Ansible is created by Red Hat, as I said, which is a leading enterprise flavor of Linux. Other flavors fall under Red Hat, such as CentOS. Ansible is Python based and it is agentless. So, wait, what does agentless mean? So, well, there are similar software such as Puppet, which essentially have the same function as Ansible. And in order to set up Puppet, you need to install extra software to make it work properly. And that extra software is called agent software. And that's why Ansible is perfect for network engineers because, with the Cisco IOS routers, you can't install anything on them that isn't Cisco. So we need an automation tool that doesn't need extra softwares installed. Ansible can connect with SSH and it fits that criteria. Ansible is free and can be installed any Linux flavor, as well as Mac OS, as Mac is still a Unix based and supports the code. So, okay, enough talking. Let's get into the labs. This is the fun part. Follow along, grab a drink and watch, or just lay back and relax. So, let's do this. Step one, we're going to open up our VirtualBox and we're gonna need 3 CentOS VMs. Now, if you don't know how to set those up, go ahead to one of my other videos where I show you how to set up a virtual machine on Oracle VBox. So let's get into this. First of all, let's go over the configuration of these virtual machines. So first one, I have a control node, I have a VM1, and I have a VM2. So these are my managed hosts, and this is my control node. So I'm going to use PuTTY to get into these machines, and in order to do that, I'll first start it up. Let me make my face smaller so that you can see things better. There you go. Still see me? Great. Alright, we'll log in again. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a user. So let's create our user. User add, and I could just do anything. Hungarian nerd. Oh, I only put in one N, so let's try that again. So you could delete it if you made a typo. And then we could do user add. Nerd, there you go. It's weird, there's 2 N's on it. Then we can set a password for Hungarian nerd. And I'll just do 123 at QWE. Oh, I see. Just hit enter, then it'll ask you for your password. Passwords don't match, I made a typo. 123 at QWE. Don't use that password in production. So, next thing we're going to do is add this user to the wheel group to grant it privileges. So, we're going to do user mod AG wheel Hungarian nerd. Then we'll do vi sudo. Okay, so we're in this file that shows like some wheel settings, and we're gonna modify some of these settings. So we're looking for /wheel, you just type that in, and we're gonna find this setting right here that's enabled by default and press I, and I'm gonna press the hash button to disable that setting, and that allows people in group wheel to run all commands. So we're gonna disable that, but then we're gonna enable this setting where we can just run it anyways without a password. So hit escape and then semicolon WQ for save. So I'm going to change this host name to control node. So I'm going to do hostname CTL set hostname control node. Let's try this out. Hostname. Bam, control node. So next we're going to run our first virtual machine, which is our managed host. And same thing, I'm going to change the host name .1.72. So let's go S. So because we're using bridged mode for the network settings, all three of these VMs by default are running on the same IP address. So we're going to go ahead and change those IP addresses to make sure that they're all differentiated. So we're going to use the vi command to open a new file that we can edit. And it's going to be an etc sysconfig network scripts ifcfg and the name of your interface, which I don't know. So we can just double hit tab and that will autofill for your interface. Hit enter, and here it's showing all of our network information. So I'm going to hit I to insert, and right under this boot proto, I'll just hit enter. We'll change it to none because DHCP is giving it a dynamic IP address, but we're trying to set it to a static IP address as these are Ansible servers. So we don't want that IP address to change, we want these to be static. We can just put in a hash. This means that whatever we type in isn't going to be run, just to kind of show what we're doing. So we can just type in server IP and then type in IP adder. And we can set it to 192.168.1.100. And before we even do that, I'm gonna go into the command prompt and let's ping it to see if it's already taken or not, because if it's already taken, then that can cause a conflict. And destination host unreachable. So I think it's pretty safe that we can go ahead and use that IP address. So next we're going to add the prefix. This is also the CIDR notation, or the subnet mask. So we can type in subnet and 24 for /24 address. That's also known as a class C private IP address. And next we're going to add the default gateway. .192.168.1. And this is going to be dependent on what your network looks like. So I'm going to type in ipconfig on the Windows, and here's my default gateway. It's 192.168.1.254. So I'm going to put that in there so it routes to the same. And we can add a DNS server. So DNS1 equals 1. We can do 8.8.8.8 and then DNS2 8.8.4.4. And I think these are actually case sensitive, so I'm just gonna stick with the linear ifconfig. Oh, we gotta restart run a command. Restart network. Okay, so I didn't know this because I've always used CentOS 7. This is actually my first time using CentOS 8. But in CentOS 7, you just do systemctl restart network. But I guess in CentOS 8, you type in nmcli networking off, and then you type in nmcli networking on. So from here, we can try to validate what we know about our network. So now we can go back and type in ifconfig, and we're still getting that same IP address. I'm just going to type in reset. Okay, so after restarting the VM, now we have our static IP address, and now we're good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and do that on our other two virtual machines. Okay, so now that we've got static IP addresses set for all three of our VMs, I'm going to go and putty back into my control node VM. We're going to SSH into our virtual machine number 1, which is 100 that we set it to. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and add our user, Hungarian nerd, user mod. I'm going to move this so we don't get too overwhelmed with text. Let's move all our virtual machines up here. And we'll make this bigger. There you go. User mod, AG wheel, Hungarian nerd. And we're going to do vi sudo and look for that wheel setting right here. Hit I, disable this setting, and enable this setting. Okay. Write it. Then we're gonna go back, so exit. Now we're back into our control node, right? Yep. So now we can go ahead and SSH into our second virtual machine, which I put the IP address to 101. Do we have SSH enabled? No, we don't. So that means I haven't set up SSH yet on my second virtual machine. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. Okay, so let's try this again. SSH to, hold on, let me check if the IP address too is good. ifconfig, and that's why I couldn't connect, because the IP address isn't the IP address that I want it to be. So we're going to do vi etc sysconfig network scripts ifcfg. Okay, so it looks good. So let's go back. I'm going to go ahead and reboot. Alright, I have the new IP address there, so now let's try again to SSH there. Yes, and it works. So now we're going to do that same command. We're going to user add Hungarian nerd, and then we're going to user mod ag wheel Hungarian nerd, and then we're going to go to vi sudo, make that change again on the wheel setting. Oops. And we're gonna go back to the control node. So now let's verify that we're in the control node. We're good. Let's go ahead and hit clear. And we're gonna install Ansible package with sudo yum install epl release. Now that's complete. Now we can install Ansible by doing sudo yum install Ansible. Complete. Now let's do some verifications. Let's do Ansible version. Okay. So it's showing we're running Ansible 2.9.17. That means it's installed pretty correctly. So let's go vi etc ansible ansible.configuration, and here we can see the configuration values of what our Ansible is configured to. So here we can change things if you want to, but we're not going to touch anything, and we can just do clear again, and let's generate our key. So we can do SSH keygen, and we can save it there. That's fine. And we're going to empty a passphrase. So enter, sorry, not empty. So here is our key, randomly generated. And we can do SSH copy ID to Hungarian nerd at 192.168.100 for VM1. Okay, so it's asking for this path. So let's go ahead and try a command copy ID. Do -I to flag the specific public key to copy to the remote host, and then which is going to be VM1. And then we'll enter in the path that it wants. rsa.pub, and then we can do Hungarian nerd at 192.168.1.100, which is the VM we're specifying. And now it's asking for the password. Dun dun dun. Did I forget my password? Okay, you know what? We're just gonna change the password. So we're gonna do sudo password Hungarian nerd new password 123 at QWE. So let's do SSH keygen. Enter passphrase. Okay, there's our keygen, and now we can go SSH copy ID -I root SSH ID RSA pub Hungarian nerd at 192.168.1.100, which is our IP of VM1. And then we go yes, enter the password. Bam! Key added. So I must have something with my password. I don't know. Happens to the best of us. Now CentOS is asking us to try it out, just to verify. So SSH Hungarian nerd at 192.168.1.100. Enter the passphrase, and we are in. Bam! Now let's go back to our control node because we're not done yet. Now we need to create a file called inventory, and we just do that by typing vi inventory. Bam, just like that. And here we can add 192.168.1 and 192.168.1.101, and we can do WQ for write. And we could do Ansible all dash inventory dash M ping. Command not found. Because I am in VM1 still. Where am I? I'm in VM1. Oops. VM1 doesn't have Ansible. Only the control node has Ansible. So VI inventory 1.101. And our hosts are unreachable, permissions denied. Well, first of all, I forgot to generate the SSH key for the second virtual machine. But I still generated it for the first one, so how come the first one's failing? Shouldn't the first one be working? What if I put in that's the one. And there you go. That's the one. We could try another command. Ansible all inventory command A. So now our environment is ready, and from here we can play around with these virtual machines to learn some basics about Ansible. I hope you enjoyed my video, and I'd like to thank you for watching.